Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Petalburg Razors going up against the Kitakami Rogues, and as they look at their opening hands for this contest, let's have a look at this tale of the tape between these two sides, where the Razors, last season, they took the wooden crown, whereas now they are a much more improved side, and they are looking to get themselves back up toward that top spot, whereas for the Kitakami Rogues, they're hovering around the bottom of the leaderboard currently, and they need to work their way back up into contention. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Colorless decks? Will it be the Darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, having flipped heads, it will be the Fast Days deck, moving their Chatot into the active spot with that Cyclizar on the bench. The Rogues are starting out with their Galactic Admin deck, and they do move the Stunky into the active spot, that Krogunk going onto the bench. We can see those two Skuntank in hand as well, but the Razors have got a Jigglypuff and a Staravia plus that Rocky Helmet, and they do pull the Wigglytuff, so surely they are going to move that Jigglypuff onto the bench. But first they do move the Rocky Helmet onto the Chatot, trying to make the Rogues reluctant to go on the offensive, but there is that Jigglypuff going to the bench. They send it over to the Rogues now, who pull the Skorupi, who they can easily move onto the bench, but they don't have a Drapion. Instead they move their own Rocky Helmet onto the Stunky, and they're looking at that Skuntank. It does require 2 energy, so they are going to move a first energy onto the Stunky here. That Scratch only does 10 damage. It will take 20 recoil damage from that Rocky Helmet, so they go without the offensive, instead sending it to the Razors, who pull their Starly as well. And they can get this Wigglytuff online. With that Comforting Song, it can restore 20 health from the active Pokemon if it's taken damage. And here is the Chatot, flips 3 coins. Each heads is worth 20 damage, and it gets 3 tails, so it does not do anything to this Stunky. It could have brought it down all the way to 10 health. This frees up the Rogues as they pull their Toxicroak, and it is the one that has that group beatdown that requires 2 energy, but it is a coin flip for every Pokemon on the side of the Rogues. They get that Skuntank online, getting its second energy for the Poison Gas. It does 50 damage, but it will also poison that Chatot, so they go with the Poison Gas, easy 50 there, and that Toxicroak now online as well. There is the Rocky Helmet damage to the Skuntank and the poison damage to the Chatot. If Chatot goes on the offensive and takes that Rocky Helmet recoil, it will be taken out, as the Professor's Research is pulled for the Razors. They play that immediately. They get a second Wigglytuff. They get the Barry, who goes fantastic with the Staraptor, but that is not in hand yet for the Razors. And the Razors do play that Comforting Song from Wigglytuff to restore 20 health for the Chatot here. Now this will not actually take it out of elimination range, because it also has that poisoning to contend with. They are going to get a first energy onto the Staravia, and here comes the Fury attack. They need to maximize their damage. They get 1, they get 2, they're able to get 2 heads, so they get 40 damage off onto the Skuntank, halving its remaining health down to 40, but there's the Rocky Helmet, bringing the Chatot down to 10, and it's the poisoning that will finish off the Chatot. Now the Razors have to choose a Pokemon to move into the active spot, but it is going over to the Rogue, so they can target it with this Skuntank, and it will be the Cyclizar, as the second Toxicroak is pulled for the Rogues. And they do move an energy onto the Toxicroak, but very quickly they decide to go with the Poison Gas once again onto Cyclizar, bringing it down to 30 health. That poisoning already bringing it down to 20. There's not much the Razors can do, but they pull their second Jigglypuff, and they've got that second Wigglytuff in hand, as they need to think about how to approach this. And they do go with the Comforting Song once again, restoring 20 health for Cyclizar, taking it out of elimination range even if it takes that Rocky Helmet damage. But it looks like they're thinking of getting an energy, and they do onto the Staravia. They're not going on the offensive to chip away here at Skuntank, and they're willing to let Cyclizar be taken off the board. They didn't even choose to get an energy onto the Wigglytuff, who's actually more powerful than the Staravia. The Rogues here to set up, they do go with the Skorupi, getting its first energy, that second Krogunk going onto the bench, and they've got that second Toxicroak. That is the Toxic variant in hand, but it's the Poison Gas that will finish off the Cyclizar here. And there's that poisoning just for the additional insult to injury. It doesn't do anything else but take the point for the Rogues, and one more and they will take game 1 in this best of 3 series. Now the Razors move the Staravia into the active spot, but they were not fortunate enough to pull the Staraptor, who is what they need right now. The Staraptor, so powerful, can run through the Rogues deck here, as Wigglytuff does get its first energy, and they are going on the offensive with the wing attack to take this Skuntank off the board. They don't want this Staravia to be poisoned, but it does take that 20 recoil damage from the Skuntank. And we were saying this is a best of 3 contest, but regardless of the outcome of these first 2 matches, we always like to say that third game still counts toward the leaderboard. But once we get into Victory Road, it's all about those wins, as it is the Skorupi being moved into the active spot after being pulled. That second Toxicroak is online, and this will allow 4 coin flips for this group beatdown. Every heads does 40 damage. They just need 2, and they get them on the first go. They even get a third. 120 damage to wipe this Staravia off the board, and this Galactic Admin deck has absolutely wiped out the Fast Days deck in this game 1, but we will have our table reset and go into our game 2. And flipping heads, it will be the Razors going first this time with their Bombardment deck. And we can see the Baneri in hand there as their only basic Pokemon. The Rogues have their Endless Nightmare deck, and we can see the Spiritomb and the Ekans, and they move that Ekans, which is from the promo set A, as it was eligible for drafting in Season A2. The Spiritomb going onto the bench. Both these sides have got a Professor's Research in hand as well that can get an extra 2 cards out of their deck, but it is the Team Rocket Grunt for the Razors being pulled first, and here is that Professor's Research. They do play, they get the Snorlax, they get the Apom as well, and they have got the Ambipom and 2 of their Lopunnies in hand. And they do move the Apom immediately to the bench, and then they follow it up with the Snorlax as well. With that Collapse that does 100, the Shroodle being pulled for the Rogues. They play their Pokeball to get a second basic Pokemon out of their deck in this turn, and they do get that Darkrai as well, but the Professor's Research affords them another 2 cards. They get that second Shroodle plus the Cyrus. They've also got their own Team Rocket Grunt in hand, as they do get an energy onto this Ekans. It doesn't actually do damage, instead it goes with the Poison Sting, so it will leave the opposing Baneri poisoned whilst it's in that active spot, or unless the Razors choose to evolve it. That will also clear it of that status condition, but not before it does that 10 damage to Baneri. The Razors pull their Rocky Helmet, and they can start evolving Pokemon here, plus getting energy onto them. Unfortunately, the Ambipom and the Lopunnies only require 1 energy each. They just need to decide which Lopunny they want, the Jumping Kick or the Hopping Shot. The Jump Kick does 20 damage plus 20 damage to one of the opposing benched Pokemon, but they are going with the Hopping Shot. It does have 90 health remaining, and it is cured of that poisoning. They get the Rocky Helmet onto it as well, and we saw what that did in the previous game. It gets the 1 required energy, and with this Hopping Shot, it will also halve the health of that opposing Ekans. And the Rogues pull their Arbok as well, moving that into the active spot. Now, it can't go on the offensive right now because it does require 2 energy for that Venomous Fang that does 70 damage, so it's not even enough to actually take out the Lopunny. This could buy the Razors a bit of time to start getting on the offensive. They do pull a Giant Cape. They've also got that Team Rocket Grunt, and they are going to play it. For every heads, they will get an energy off of this Ekans, but as soon as it's a Tails, it stops, and it's a Tails right from the word go, so there are no energy removed from the Arbok, but that won't prevent them from being able to go on the offensive. They get a first energy onto the Snorlax as well. That Hopping Shot taking 30 health from the Arbok. It has 50 remaining, as the Grafaiai has been pulled for the Rogues. Grafaiai does have the ability to poison the opposing Pokemon with that poisonous coating, and they are going to go for it. This may be a little too much though, because they don't need to worry about that, because Arbok will do that itself with that Poisonous Fang, unless they were contemplating changing Arbok out for this matchup. But there it is, the Venomous Fang, 70 damage onto the Lopunny. It will take 20 recoil as well, which will free up the Lopunny to take out the Arbok. But with that said, in doing so, that will free the Lopunny up to be eliminated by the poisoning. So not necessarily free it up, it will leave it there having to be taking that poisoning. But the Razors pull their second Snorlax. They've got that Giant Cape in hand, and they do get a second energy onto that Snorlax. And there's the Hopping Shot to take the Arbok out of this contest. They didn't want to risk the coin flips of that Ambipom double kick, where for each heads, there's 2 coin flips. Each heads is 40 damage. And here it is, the Spiritomb being moved into the active spot for the Rogues. But that Poisoning takes Lopunny out of this matchup, so both sides have a point here in game 2. It is Ambipom being moved into the active spot to face off with the Spiritomb. Their second Grafaiai has been pulled, and they've got a Shroodle in hand. They immediately move it to the bench, which means they will be able to try for this poison encoding twice from the next turn. But on this first turn where there's, on this current turn where there's only one Grafaiai, they do flip the tails, they don't get the poisoning onto the Ambipom, but this Confuse Ray does 20 damage to the Ambipom, and it is another coin flip. It could leave the Ambipom confused, and this time they do get their heads. This will leave it where Ambipom, when it goes on the offensive, it will be a coin flip that even determines if it can do damage. And the Razors just pulled that Pokeball, they play it immediately to get the Apom. There is a second Baneri in that deck as well, but here's the Ambipom getting its first and only required energy. If it gets 2 heads, it will actually do 80 damage, but it doesn't even get the heads to allow it to go on the offensive due to that confusion. They did flip the tails. This sends it over to the Rogues and leaves Spiritomb there still at full strength, and now they've got 2 Grafaiais on hand as they start setting up that Darkrai with its first of 3 required energy. They can try this Poisonous Coating twice, one for each Grafaiai. They miss it on the first one, they can still try it with the second one here though. They want that poisoning onto the Ambipom, and they miss it both times, unsuccessful on getting this Ambipom poison. They continue with the Confuse Ray though, and Ambipom is already confused, but that will not stop it from taking that 20 damage from the Spiritomb. Now the Razors do pull their barrier. This is fantastic because with that Snorlax on the bench, it does reduce the energy cost that it takes for Snorlax to go on the offensive. And they are going to retreat the Ambipom as well. They don't want to risk the coin flips. They want to take that Spiritomb off the board. They can play that Barry. They also get the Giant Cape onto Snorlax to bring its health up to 140. Keeping in mind, they've also got another Snorlax in hand too. But here is the Barry, reducing the energy cost to 2 for this collapse. It will leave the Snorlax asleep, but not before it takes that Spiritomb off of the board, getting the Petalburg Razors their second point here. They need one more to ensure that this will go to a game 3 to determine our victor. But the Rogues now get to decide who they move in next. They choose the Darkrai. The Razors need to flip their heads for Snorlax to wake up, and they get it as well. And Darkrai, still needing 2 more energy, won't be able to put Snorlax to sleep just yet, but they do get the second energy onto it after just pulling the Spiritomb as well, and they can continue to go for these poisonous coatings. They want to try and get that poisoning onto Snorlax now. Unsuccessful on the first attempt, they will go to that second Grafaiai and try this once again. And this time they are successful, so Snorlax is left with that poisoning, and the Rogues need to decide what they want to do from here. They could have gone for the Cyrus, but they opted against pulling Ambipom back in, but now they're playing the Team Rocket Grunts to try and get the energy off the Snorlax. They get 1, which is fantastic for them because it pulls Snorlax down to 2 energy, which means it won't be able to go on the offensive on this coming turn. This could be huge as they don't pull the second Barrier, instead they pull the second Baneri. And Baneri does only require 1 energy, but Snorlax does get its third. It is still awake, but Darkrai, with that Dark Void, will actually put Snorlax to sleep. This is going to be even harder now for the Razors to go on the offensive against the Darkrai. And there it is, getting that third energy. This does do 60 damage, but it is going to be working in unison with that poisoning that is on the Snorlax. 60 damage, also putting the Snorlax to sleep. The Razors need to flip heads. And once again, they are successful, and they will be able to get another energy onto the Snorlax as well, but not before they've pulled this Professor's Research. They can get another 2 cards out of their deck. They thought of playing an energy, but instead they are going for the Professor's Research first. They get a Barry, they get the second Ambipom as well. And remember, the Rogues with this Endless Nightmare deck still have those 2 Cyrus in hand. They get the second Snorlax onto the bench, but they still need to get a 4th energy onto the Snorlax. They're taking their time here. They need to think about what they're doing. And they're going to move this energy to the Snorlax, surely. But no, they've moved it to the bench Snorlax. They can't go on the offensive. What are they doing? They move the Baneri. They moved the Lopunny online. Have the Razors just made a crucial error in panic? They end their turn. The active Snorlax can't get any further damage onto the Darkrai. That would have put Darkrai into elimination range. The Razors have just made a massive mistake, as this frees up the Kitakami Rogues. They can move an energy onto one of their bench Pokemon. They just move their second Darkrai onto the bench as well, getting its first energy. The Dark Void continues onto this Snorlax. They wipe it off the board. That error by the Razors is going to surely cost them this game too. The Rogues just take a second point. The Razors move their second Snorlax onto that active spot. The Razors have just pulled a Fan Rotom. They get a second energy onto this active Snorlax. They are going to play the Barry now, allowing the Snorlax to go on the offensive. It will do 100 damage to the Darkrai, but that Darkrai would have been in elimination range from the previous Snorlax. They are going to flip their coin. They get ahead, so Snorlax is awake. But the Rogues, they have those Cyrus in hand, and the Razors are none the wiser. This frees them up to drag that Ambipom into the active spot. That error by the Razors has cost them not just game 2, but the series, because the Dark Void takes the Ambipom off the board, and the Rogues are now going to be trying for a clean sweep, whereas the Razors need to offset this damage that they've taken in the first 2 games. And with our final board reset, once again the Razors are going to be going first. This time it is with their Hall of Origin deck, and we can see the Bidoof in hand that they immediately move onto the bench. The Rogues have their Galactic Boss deck with the Zubat, and they've got a Murkrow in hand. We can see the Golbat that they've got, but they're choosing not to play that just yet. So it is a 1v1 matchup between a Bidoof and a Zubat, as it is Arceus being pulled by the Petalburg Razors, immediately moved onto the bench to back up Bidoof, sending it over to the Rogues, who pull their Poochyena as well, and they've got that Professor's Research plus a Cyrus, playing the Research immediately to get another 2 cards. They get a second Golbat and a second Poochyena as well, moving one of the Poochyena onto the bench, and now they do move that Murkrow onto the bench as well, as Zubat gets its first and only required energy. If they can get it all the way up to a Crobat, it doesn't still not require any further energy. As it comes back over to the Razors, they get the Giant Cape, and they've got the Bibarel. I always get some of these names confused. They get the Bibarel? We'll see how I go. Onto that active spot, but it is Arceus who they're setting up for that Power Blast that does require 4 energy. And the Rogues have pulled a Poochyena, a Mightyena as well, but they do get onto the Poochyena. It is the Golbat coming online as well. It does do 30 damage with that Bite, but it is Mightyena getting its first required energy. This Bite chipping away at the health of Bibarel. I'm going to go back and forth between this, I swear. But it is the Dawn being pulled for the Petalburg Razors as Arceus continues to get set up, and they've got that Giant Cape as well if they want to add an extra 20 health to either of their 2 Pokemon as the Rogues pull their Pokeball. They are going to play that immediately. It will either be a Zubat or a Murkrow, and it is a Zubat, and they've got the Golbat in hand that goes perfectly with that as they continue to bite away at this the Bibarel. Now I'm just getting the name wrong. What am I doing? As it is the Petalburg Razors pulling the Porygon as well, and they do have a Porygon 2 in hand. They get a 3rd energy onto the Arceus as well. They think about whether or not they want to end their turn just yet, as it is the Crobat being pulled for the Rogues, and fantastic for them because the Crobat can actually outlast a hit from the Arceus. It is a 2nd energy on to the Mightyena as well, but they don't bring the Mightyena in. Instead, they're keeping that Crobat because they're aware of that Arceus on the bench that is getting set up. The Rogues take the first point here in game 3 as they're going for the clean sweep. Arceus moved into the active spot, the Pokeball being pulled for the Razors as well. And there is only 1 Arceus in this deck. There's 1 Regigigas as well, but it is the 2nd Porygon being pulled. Porygon being evolved into the Porygon 2 that's on the bench, but here it is, that Giant Cape going under Arceus, boosting its health up to 140 as well. Getting that 4th energy. It will have to discard a random energy, but they are all Darkness energies being generated for the Colorless team this series, as here it is, that Power Blast, 100 damage onto the Crobat. It will discard one of those energy, but it can get easily replaced in the next turn. It is the 2nd Mightyena being pulled for the Rogues now. And they can move that Poochyena, which is what they decided to go with, having not decided to go with the Zubat earlier. A Poochyena getting its 1st energy, and the Darkness Fang onto Arceus, bringing it down to 90 health. And there is that Regigigas for the Razors, and it is that energy being replaced for Arceus to take this Crobat off the board. It will get that 1st energy for the Hall of Origin deck in this third game. Again, they're trying to offset the damage as much as possible because this still counts toward the leaderboard, so every game matters here in regulation season. Mighty Anna being moved into the active slot, the Professor's Research being pulled for the Rogues. They want a Honch Crow here, and that is exactly what they get, but they also get the second Crobat, so they can start setting up that line as well, moving the Zubat onto the bench. The Honch Crow is online, they can get that second Mighty Anna online. This Galactic Boss deck for the Kitakami Rogues is being played exactly how they need it to, and they are going to get a second energy onto the Honch Crow. They're able to set up all their Pokemon how they need. This Darkness Fang, 60 damage onto the Arceus, as well as it comes back over to the Razors. Arceus has only 30 health remaining, and that Pokeball being played by the Razors, getting another basic Pokemon. It is that Bidoof being pulled from their deck. They can move either the Regigigas or the Bidoof onto the bench, but they're not worried about that at the moment. Instead, they go for another Power Blast that will wipe this Mighty Anna off the board, and the Razors get their second point. They are 1 point away from taking Game 3. But before they can worry about that, the Rogues get the decision of who they want to move into the active spot. They choose to go with the Zubat. Now, it only requires 1 energy, as does the Golbat, and they've just pulled a Rocky Helmet in this contest. And there it is, that first and only required energy being required for the Golbat. It can easily go on the offensive, but first they're having a look at the Honch Crow with that Skill Dive. It can do 50 damage to any of the opposing Pokemon. They are not safe on the bench, but Arceus has been taken down by Golbat here, and I'm sure the Galactic Boss would love that, as the Razors now need to decide between Porygon, and they do go with Porygon 2 into that active spot. They do pull the second Porygon 2 as well. We are still yet to see that Buggy Beaming Porygon Z in this matchup, as that Sharpen from Porygon 2 does do 30 damage, and the Razors are going to play the Celestic Town Elder. They get that Bidoof out of their discard pile because it does provide them with a random basic Pokemon out of the discard pile. Their Sharpen continues on to the Golbat. They must have been hoping for the Arceus, as the Giant Cape is pulled for the Rogues, and instead they're thinking of going with the Rocky Helmet onto the Golbat. But first they are going to evolve it into a Crobat before they cement that decision. Thinking about how they want to approach this, they're going with the Giant Cape. This will bring the Crobat back up to 100 health. Keeping it well out of range of that Porygon 2 being able to take it down, but they do go with the Darkness Fang. 50 damage onto the Porygon 2, bring it down to 30 health. The Razors are going to pull their own Rocky Helmet, and they need to decide what they want to do from here. They can potentially retreat that active Porygon 2. Instead, they get a Rocky Helmet onto it here. They need to be very careful here. They could try and drag this matchup out, but it is not looking good for them right now. And instead, they know where it's going. They're going with the Sharpen onto the Crobat. It does 30 damage. This will free up the Kitakami Rogues. They pull the Honch Crow. That is not what they're concerned with, though. They're going to retreat the Crobat, moving the Mighty Anna into the active spot. They want to maximize their damage on the leaderboard. And with this Darkness Fang, it takes the Porygon 2 off the board. And the Kitakami Rogues have managed a clean sweep over the Petalburg Razors. Two sides who have started this season completely differently, but we have just crossed the halfway mark here in Season A2, as the Razors are sitting in 4th. Next round they are going up against the Cinnabar Blazers, whereas for the Rogues, they're still in 9th, but they will be going up against the Holland Allies next round. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.